It is now day 2 of the 2026 NFL Draft, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, at least as of right now, are slated to have 4 selections here today. We're going to be talking about a mock draft heading into day 2 of the NFL Draft for your Jacksonville Jaguars. This is Jags Now presented by Prize Picks, our wonderful sponsor of today's episode. I'm your host, Cullen Brown. Also, stay tuned because on the back half of today's show, we're going to be discussing some best players available at some positions that I think the Jaguars could target here on day 2. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But without any further ado, let's get into today's show. But before we get into the mock draft, guys, we're giving content all year round, whether it's the draft, free agency, during the season, whatever the case may be. We're not going anywhere. Some content creators, they get through the draft. It gets to May, June, July. They may take some vacation time. Not us here at Jags Now. We got you guys coverage all year long. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for round the year coverage of your Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, so James Gladstone spoke to Jaguars media members after the NFL Draft yesterday. There were some rumors going around. Would the Jaguars potentially trade into round 1 of the NFL Draft? And kind of paraphrasing here, but Gladstone basically said it wasn't worth making the trade up, which I kind of speculated in the video that we posted yesterday here on the channel. And, there's the Brian Thomas Jr. rumors where they're going to package draft picks. It ultimately just didn't make sense. But one kind of quote that Gladstone did have when someone asked, like, hey, how, bold are you going to be today? How, adventurous are you going to be? And potentially looking to go after certain guys. Gladstone had this to say, I know we'll be strategically bold. That leads me to believe that there's at least one move going to be made today. I'm calling my shot right now. I think the Jaguars are going to make at least one trade during day 2 today. It could be, a trade back, could be a trade forward. But I wanted this mock to kind of reflect that because I did get the sense from Gladstone that they are going to move up. So on today's mock, I'm starting out with a trade. There are some guys that fell yesterday, and I think the Jaguars could look to move up from the 56th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. I have them trading with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I use the Rich Hill kind of draft chart in terms of how to accurately compile this trade. So the Jaguars get a second-round pick, number 41 overall, in exchange for 88, so one of your third-round picks, and also threw in a 7th rounder to make it kind of even. So the Jaguars move up because there is a guy out of the University of Georgia who was sitting on the board, and I think if you're the Jaguars, you got to consider it. And that would be Christen Miller, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Our guy Tom Downey, who does scouting reports for all of the prospects here in the 2026 NFL Draft, this was his scouting report on Miller. Quality run defender, plays with good motor. Plenty of upper body power along with good balance and lower body anchor. Doesn't have much of a pass rush plan, and his hand usage will need growth. He's a really young player. I think he's around 21 years old, but if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you did trade for Ruka Rose shortly before the draft started. I still think this defensive tackle room needs some work. And if you add a guy like Christen Miller, who I think he's got a lot to grow in terms of both as a run defender and as a pass rusher, I see a lot of potential in this guy. And we saw 2 defensive tackles go yesterday during round 1 of the NFL Draft in Caleb Banks and also Peter Woods. That leaves you with 3 really high-end, I would say, defensive tackles that I think could contribute for you early on next season. That would be Lee Hunter. That would be Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. And I think Christen Miller would be another option. And I could see the Jacksonville Jaguars potentially going after one of those guys if it made sense for them. Don't be shocked if James Gladstone makes a move here on day 2 of the NFL Draft. We're going to be getting into more of my mock draft here in just a moment, but I couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our wonderful sponsor over at Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. The playoffs are here for basketball, baseball is underway, and it's time to cash in with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Prize Picks is available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. The app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. For this upcoming football season, I've got a season-long lineup that I'm rocking with. I got the more on Trevor Lawrence's 3,699 passing yards. He's hit 4,000 passing yards three times during his career. Give me the more on him. And Terrell McMillan, I think he is a star in the making. Give me the more on his receiving touchdowns for this upcoming season. $20 lineup to win $60. New user offer. Download the Prize Picks app today. with a link in the comments and description and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, moving in, because you still have 2 third-round picks that you can use. I'm going with Josiah Trotter, the linebacker out of Missouri. Dane Brugler had this to say on Josiah Trotter ahead of the NFL draft via The Athletic, via the Beast that he releases every year. He had this: Trotter doesn't have playmaking awareness and coverage, at least not yet. But his run instincts and take-on skills are among the best in this draft class. He looks like a starting NFL Mike. And I couldn't agree more. Josiah Trotter, obviously the son of great linebacker Jeremiah Trotter, who also Josiah's brother Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is already in the NFL. A lot of great lineage there. And I think if you're the Jaguars, talked about it ad nauseum, Devin Lloyd left during NFL free agency. And I feel okay with this linebacker room. You got Jack Kaiser, you got Ventrell Miller. Obviously, Foye Oluwakin's going to be holding it down. You got Dennis Gardeck on one side in base packages. But I do think linebacker is a position that the Jaguars could look to attack on day 2 if the right guy falls to them. And there's some still linebackers that they could attack in round 2, for example. I mean, they could go after a guy like Anthony Hill, C.J. Allen. Jacob Rodriguez is still on the board. So I think the Jaguars will have the option of either going linebacker or defensive tackle, or maybe another position here that we'll discuss here in just a moment. But those would be my picks if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think Trotter would be a guy that, if you don't necessarily want him to play right away, maybe just on early downs, I think he could be a smart selection for Jacksonville. Moving on to your final pick in this mock draft after the trade, I'm going with Max Klare, the tight end out of Ohio State. Obviously, the Jaguars are set to extend Britton Strange here at some point in this offseason. I think he'll get a pretty nice bag from the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they need to add to that room. They've only got, as of this current moment, because they haven't extended Britton Strange, the Jaguars have no tight ends currently under contract past the 2026 NFL season. Getting a guy like Max Klare that gives you a little bit of flexibility with multiple tight end sets. Here's the scouting report on Klare. Quality athlete with fluid movement, able to create more separation than most tight ends. Not a great blocker before Ohio State, but took a step forward this past year. Hasn't always had the most reliable hands, but to me, Klare is kind of a really do-it-all tight end that will make a lot of NFL offensive coordinators happy with the little things that he does. The separation, he's willing to be a willing blocker. Just kind of a do-it-all guy. And you see the numbers on screen. 400 yards receiving last year, 10 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. To me, like I mentioned, the Jaguars have taken an extreme interest in this tight end, kind of just draft class in general. They've had guys for draft visits such as Eli Stowers, Oscar Delp, Jack Indries, just to name a few. What about a guy like Max Klare to kind of be an additional piece to this tight end room? Don't be surprised if the Jaguars, even in the second round, look at tight end. I have them going, though, at the third round in this mock draft at that position. Let me know what you guys think about this tight end class down below in the comment section. To round things out, let's look at some best players available. Our guy Tom Downey, who's crushing the draft here as he always does. Here are some of his best available. We got number 1, Jermod McCoy. Clearly that knee injury scaring a lot of teams. A lot of people viewed him as potentially the best corner in this class. He falls all the way to day 2. Got D'Angelo Ponce, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Colton Hood, just to name some other names. Some really good secondary members that are on the board. I don't know personally if Jacksonville will go secondary, in my opinion, this early. Although those are all 4 really good secondary pieces, I should say, that could contribute day 1 on NFL rosters. You got Cashius, Howell, T.J. Parker, a couple of edge rushers. Could the Jaguars be interested in if they fall? Maybe. Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington, I don't think, especially with the Jaguars ultimately keeping Brian Thomas Jr. They'll go wide receiver. But then it goes to Cade McDonald. And then we can actually switch over to the defensive line. There are some names here that the Jaguars could potentially look at adding in this draft class. McDonald's one of them. We took Christen Miller in this mock draft that we have here for you today. Lee Hunter. I think, to me, those are the 3 kind of in their own tier in terms of top defensive linemen that the Jaguars could look to add. I'd be shocked if any of those guys make it to the third round, so you'll probably have to grab them in round 2. But there's some other guys that if you want to wait till day 3 that you could also go after. Dominique Orange, big citrus, really good run defender. Grayson Halton's got some pass rush production. We've talked about him a bunch on the channel. Chris McClellan, I took him in my final Jaguars mock draft, along with Caleb Proctor and Darrell Jackson Jr. Could they go the edge route? We talked about Cashius Howell and TJ Parker a moment ago. Cashius Howell, more of a speed rusher, not necessarily going to help you the most out in the run game, but still a really talented edge rusher out of Texas A&M. TJ Parker out of Clemson had a really good motor. Didn't have the best production as compared to 2024, but still an intriguing option. A lot of people like R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma. I think he could be a wild card in this draft class, again, more of a speed rusher. Zion Young, physical, bigger edge rusher. I think he's like around 6'5", 260. Does have a little bit of off-field concerns from his days at Michigan State and also the DWI arrest that he had back in December. We'll see ultimately where he ends up. Gabe Akis, Illinois, Deniden Sutton, Mello Height, Derek Moore. All these guys probably into round 2, early round 3, so maybe potential options if you are Jacksonville. Could one of these guys maybe fall to 81? Possibly. We'll see, but I think that the Jaguars are going to look at this edge group here on day 2. And we talked about linebackers. Look at the talent that's still on the board. C.J. Allen, Jacob Rodriguez, Anthony Hill Jr., Jake Golday. All 4 of those guys, I think, are linebackers in the league that can contribute in their own kind of special ways. C.J. Allen, more of a cerebral linebacker. Jake Rodriguez, the do-it-all turnover machine who tests really well at the NFL Combine. Anthony Hill, can he put it all together? He's got the athletic traits to do so. Jake Golday, the converted edge to off-ball linebacker. All really talented guys. Josiah Trotter, who we took in this mock draft, but there's still some good value, I think, in round 3. Kyle Lewis, will he be kind of like more of a sub-nickel linebacker? The talented man out of Pittsburgh who had a really good Senior Bowl. Caleb Elarms-Orr and Keyshawn Elliott, also some names to keep an eye on. And then tight end. I think this is a position, rather, that the Jaguars will be interested in as well. I mentioned the visits the Jaguars have had with Eli Stowers, Jack Indries, and Oscar Delp. We took Max Klare in this mock draft. Justin Jolly, who I had in my final Jaguars mock draft before the NFL draft started. Look at him as a potential option as a field stretcher. Eli Raridan, Marlon Klein, and Joe Royer, some other names to keep an eye on. So that's a recap. Best available, and here is who I have the Jaguars selecting on day 2. After a trade-up, getting Christen Miller, the talented but young defensive tackle out of Georgia. Josiah Trotter, linebacker, really good run defender, needs to develop in coverage as an off-ball linebacker. And then you have Max Klare, the tight end, to pair alongside Britton Strange. I want to hear from you guys. Enough with me rambling. Enough with me giving my takes. I want to hear from you guys. Who do you want the Jaguars to draft today? Let me know down in the comments section below. Could be somebody that I didn't even mention. Is there a position that I didn't discuss that you think the Jaguars will target today? Let me know down below. And thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports and also our friends over at Prize Picks. Until next time, Jags fans, we will have you covered, though. Whenever the Jaguars make a pick, we're getting either at least a short and if a video on all the picks today. Subscribe, lock us in, turn on your notifications. We'll have you covered throughout the entire 2026 NFL Draft. Until next time, Jags fans, peace out.